3, 2, 1. Welcome to the Other Half of It podcast, where we reveal what it's really like living as a creative couple here in Seoul, South Korea. We discuss the behind the scenes of our work, our lifestyle, our philosophies, and Korean culture. My name is Cedric Skycedi.
I'm Becky.
And if you're new here and you're into any of those things that I mentioned, definitely hit that subscribe button. If you're watching on YouTube, click on that notification bell. And if you're listening on audio, definitely subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. So today, I thought it'd be very nice if we can officially get introduced to who Becky is, because on the past 2 years of this channel, she has never actually told her story.
You never asked.
That is very true. So today I'm asking.
Okay.
Yeah, because Becky is also obviously half Korean. And many of you guys who are following the Skycedi channel, you guys have followed me through my video talking about my Black Korean story, growing up Black and Korean. And I thought it'd be cool for Becky to share her side on the other side of the spectrum, being white and Korean.
Oh, the other
the
side.
Korean part being the central part of the spectrum that unites us. Yeah, so today I'll just sort of ask you some of the questions and you can share your experience.
Okay.
Growing up.
Okay, it's probably not going to be as interesting as your story.
Oh man, nah, it'll be fine. It'll be fine. I think the point is for everyone to get to know you.
Okay, guys.
Your story is your story.
Get ready to know me, whether you want to or not. Here I come.
So let's start with, of course, the basics. Where were you actually born and where did you grow up? Or did you even grow up anywhere?
This is so weird because I'm never, not usually the focal point of these kind of conversations.
No, the tables have turned.
Yeah.
Because you're the one that's always interviewing people.
Turntables. Let me think. So where I was born?
Yeah.
Oh.
And you don't have to drag it out.
Yeah, pretty much I was born in Omaha, Nebraska at the end. On a military base somewhere.
Right. And growing up, did you grow up in a certain town?
Well, we moved from Nebraska when I was very young. I think only a couple months old. So I have no recollection and no affinity. And then we moved a lot growing up because of my dad's work. So yeah, we just moved all over the US. I think the longest place that I've ever lived is Seoul, South Korea.
Right. So you started out in Nebraska, but then what are some of the other states that you lived? Can you give us a general time frame of where you lived?
Okay, let's see if I can remember. We lived in Michigan. And the only reason I know that is because we have photo evidence, because I don't remember that either. We lived in Michigan. We lived in Virginia. And we also lived in California and Colorado. I think we lived in Colorado twice because we also went somewhere else. We lived in Alabama as well. And then I was in Oklahoma for a bit for school. And then my family recently moved they were then in Maryland and then Virginia again. And then I'm here.
Right. So what was the longest period of time that you stayed in any one place?
Well, I know when we were in Virginia, we were there for 6 years, I think. But again, I was really, really young. I have very fond memories of playing with the neighborhood kids. That was probably, when people talk about that happy childhood, those would be the years where I remember we were so scrappy and running around from morning to night. And it was so fun. That was 6 years, I think, in Virginia. And then in California, or was it Colorado? Colorado total, I think 5 years, but it was fractured because we lived there for a short time, then we moved away, and then we came back.
Right. And so that's really just a product of being part of a military family where your dad was actively getting restationed. Yeah. Where for me, I was more so I lived in a few places, and then once I was 5, we just settled in the last place where my dad retired. So our experiences
when you were
are very
5?
different. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, because let's see, I was 5 years old, and then my dad got stationed in Pope Air Force Base, because he was in the Air Force, but Fort Bragg is right there. And we just stayed there because he retired shortly after. Because he had me when he was a lot older.
Yeah.
So he had already served most of his military term.
I can't imagine what it would be like to live in one place for your whole life.
Right. So I'm sure that has a lot to play with just how you see life, how you view relationships and things like that. But let's talk about, okay, so like you were born and you moved around a lot, but let's just try to talk about, I guess, your childhood, right? Because you grew up with a Korean mom and a Caucasian father, right? So how was your life growing up overall? like I know it's a general question, but like, how was your life growing up as a mixed kid in elementary school? Like, did you realize that I was different, or that, you know, my parents look different, but all my friends, they all had like similar looking parents?
This is so weird to have these questions being asked to me, because I always ask the questions.
Of course.
Oh, I don't even know where to begin with that, honestly. I didn't really recognize having a non-traditional white American family until maybe 4th grade, when we lived in Alabama. I think that was the time where I recognized it the most, because that was the first time people actually pointed out me, like, hey, look at that little Asian girl, or, you know, doing chinky eyes to me and making fun of me. No one wanted to be my friend. That was 4th grade. And then this came back to me. I remember when actually that year, because it was Alabama, everybody wanted to join the cheer squad if you were a girl. And so I actually remember thinking when we first moved there, like, maybe I'll join the cheer squad, because I was a gymnast. And then I remember walking past the practice and all the girls were white. And for some reason, it really intimidated me. And so I never tried out, even though I could have smoked them all. I was a gymnast. I was a competitive gymnast. But yeah, I remember at that time, I remember walking past them and be like, oh no, they wouldn't want me to be there. So I think that was the first time I had this recognition, like, I'm not really blending in well here. And then, that's the first time I ever asked my dad, why are they calling me these names? Why did they do these things to me? And that was the first time we had that conversation. Our home was really a blend. Like, it was a really perfect blend, honestly. We ate Korean food growing up, but my dad liked to take us out for shakes, and we stopped by 7-Eleven a lot because we were road tripping all the time. And then, I'm trying to think, like, because my mom would watch Korean dramas at home, so we were used to watching those, especially the historical ones. And we had lots of Korean family friends that my mom would have, and so I have so many experiences of like Korean Bible study going on at home all night long. And then we were like locked upstairs because, you know, they don't want us to bother them. But then we would also have, on my dad's side, you know, his military friends would come over, or we would host little cocktail parties at home and play like Space Jeopardy.
Space Jeopardy.
I think my sister wrote those questions. So Thanksgiving was always like a real blend too of Korean food. We would have like turkey and ham, but we'd also have japchae and bulgogi. So but honestly, I'm really trying to think, because it's just very fragmented in my mind.
Sure.
I don't have too many strong specific memories.
Right. So what about like family dynamics in terms of like seeing your dad's side of the family or seeing your mom's side of the family growing up? How was that? Did you get a chance to interact with both sides? Yeah,
more so my dad's side. Growing up, the most memories I had of my Korean side was one aunt who lived in the States, but it was kind of a troubled relationship. And then I just remember getting letters from my Korean family written in Korean. And then, of course, we'd have old photos. And I really loved to look at those old photos, especially seeing me as a child in Korea. So that was always very interesting to think like, hey, that's me, you know, there at the river with my uncle. And then, of course, my grandmother, I remember my mom would talk to her on the phone a lot when we were growing up. And she would actually ask me to get the old calling card, like the international card that you had to pay for. Yeah. My mom would ask me to get those because, you know, I could speak English, of course, and just easily get them. And then the amount, I think you had to ask for a certain amount, right? So I would buy my mom. I guess you have like certain minutes that you have to use. Yeah, I would buy my mom those international cards, and then she would call my halmoni, and it would always end in tears, every single conversation. So that was kind of my memory of Korean family growing up, honestly. But we didn't have much to do with them because we didn't see them often. So
Right.
we were all it was all very separated, I think, because our family also was quite unique from my dad's side.
Okay, right. So needless to say, you probably didn't visit Korea much growing up.
No, I visited when we were quite young, and then when I was 16. And that was such a miserable trip when I was 16. And then I came back again after university, right? I think it was after university. No, I came back during university. I studied here. And then after I graduated, I returned to the States to graduate. And then I came back to Korea, and I've been here ever since.
Gotcha. Okay. So most of your childhood didn't really have the experience of going to Korea. I mean, I saw like baby pictures of you like in Korea when you were like super young. Probably don't remember too much from that time. But yeah, which is, I guess like I can relate in that I didn't even visit Korea until I was mid-20s for the first time ever. Yeah. So like growing up as a kid, and then we'll get to, I guess, where you are now.
Okay.
Because you've been here for 8 years now. Yeah. So like growing up as a kid, do you feel like being white and Korean really played a part in your social relationships at school, say like middle school, high school? Like, did people look at you differently? Did people treat you differently? Or did you just sort of blend in? It's like, yeah, I'm living my own life. I got my own friends, whatever.
People ask me that question because, you know, I might behave a certain way or like certain things or do certain things. And people are, depending on who I'm talking to, like, oh, Becky, because she's Korean, she does that. Or people are like, oh, because she's white, she does that. But in reality, I think it's because I'm just a little weird. And I've been very independent my whole life. And because we moved around so much, it's not like I had much opportunity or chance to get embedded with a certain clique or community. Because we were up and gone all the time. So I was very free-spirited and just kind of did whatever I wanted to do at the moment. So I think, yeah, I mean, I guess that would play into it, right? It was primarily because we moved around so much when we were younger. Like I went to 2 or 3 elementary schools, so I don't even remember too much. But when high school is probably the most significant time, because high school is where there was a very small Korean exchange student community, and we just immediately gravitated towards each other. I think even without me actively thinking like, oh, they're Korean, we should get on. I think I just saw them and I was like, oh, hey, you know, familiar. And I felt like a lot of the students also felt very comfortable with me because I could see where they're coming from. And so that was my first time having really Korean friends. And some of them were still best friends today. And that was very, very significant for me.
Sure.
And I think I started noticing too being treated a little bit differently by maybe my American peers. And, you know, it would be like little things here and there. I distinctly remember we were at a theater practice because I did theater. And somebody had left their cell phone lying around, and it was like a panda bear case. And
I see where this is going.
There's a lot of people. There's like 20 people on set. And
Becky, is this yours?
Exactly. And say, hey, someone left their phone. Becky, this is yours, right? And I was like, no.
Right.
It's not mine.
Right. I mean, so did you ever get made fun of for being one or the other growing up? Because I feel like a lot of half Koreans, I grew up around a lot of half Koreans. We all seem to have like the same stories and the same sorts of experiences with getting made fun of. Like, you know, people, they've heard me say a million times that I used to get called Black Chinaman growing up. But did you ever have that experience? Because, I mean, there's got to be some people who may have bypassed that in their
Maybe.
childhood. Yeah.
Like I said, I really battled against biases or prejudices against me by just going the unexpected route or being quicker than they were. And I'm talking, I guess specifically when I'm talking about Americans primarily, I guess white Americans mostly, is that I would just try to be more well-read, be a better singer,
Right.
be funnier, you know, have more friends. This was kind of my I think my buffer to not being a loser or like discriminated against. But yeah, I mean, because I think if you had that kind of confidence in yourself, and I had too much confidence, let's be honest, but to the point where, for example, your mom packs you kimbap for lunch and all your friends are like, what is that? If you have that super supreme confidence in yourself, you'll be like, what is kimbap? You never had this before? Come on, right? So I think I've vacillated between both of those. Like on one hand, sometimes depending on how I felt that day, I was really firmly strong, like you can't say anything against me. But then on the other day, if I was suffering from low self-esteem or something had happened at home or I was just feeling low, then I would just kind of crumple in on myself.
Yeah, I could totally see you doing that because like I think for someone like myself, if I were to get those sorts of comments, and I don't remember necessarily like getting joked on because like I packed kimbap or anything like that. I don't even think I ever really did going to school, but like I feel like I would be the one to let that get to me, but you're the witty one. You're the one that's sharp and you could like crack back.
Yeah,
and make them feel stupid.
I do have I have memories of doing that. Or one time my friend was driving in my car and he was like, you know, your car smells like onions, right? And I was like, do you know what you smell like to people who don't eat your kind of food? And he was like, so you better roll down the window. But I mean, honestly, it sticks with me. Obviously, you remember that because after that, I tried to put baking soda in my car. I tried to get rid of any of the scent that I didn't recognize. Because I guess it did smell like onions or kimchi or garlic or whatever.
For the record, it has to be garlic for sure.
Yeah, probably. But I mean, I didn't recognize that. So, but it still sticks with me, despite in the moment where you just you snap back.
Sure.
Put you in your place. You can't say that about people, but it's not coming out of a place of understanding or educating. It's still coming out of a place of hurt. But I think it takes a lot of time to see yourself from that third person perspective.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, I guess you had your challenges here and there, but would you say that you had a rough childhood because of your ethnic backgrounds or your cultures? And I'm not trying to obviously like fish for an answer, but like, cause everyone's experience is different. Like I didn't have a particularly like tough childhood, but I know people who have because of their race.
I would say more than like outside societies. I felt it more keenly when I visited Korea when I was 16. That was probably for me one of the most painful eye-openers, I guess. Because I guess I didn't really have a very strong sense of pride or identity or anything at all. I didn't even think I was like, I'm American.
Right.
I never thought about that. I'm Korean. I also never thought about that. I'm white. Like I had none of those typical identifiers that people oftentimes grow up with innately to create a sense of I fit in here. Because I didn't have that. I just was purely, I'm me. And you don't like me, then I don't like you. Right? But you can't, it's very hard to hold that by yourself your whole life. I think maybe my older sister had a harder time, and for me, also when we lived in Alabama, that was the very first time I ever encountered racism, outright racism.
Not Alabama.
So shocker, but it was the first time, and since then, like I really grappled with that, and it's weird because I feel like as I've gotten older, maybe it's just I'm more aware and I'm not so internalized. Because I was very stuck in my head a lot. But as I get older and become more aware, then I more realize like, oh, that person's, looking down on me or discriminating me, or they're saying something about my family. And those instances became more frequent, I think, as I became more aware.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. So how did you end up in Korea then? Because 8 years, so that means throughout most of your 20s, you stayed here. Yeah. So like, what was the reason for you to actually come to Korea? Because it's kind of like, for me, honestly, it was sort of a not returning, but going to the motherland, because obviously like my dad had passed many years ago, and I wanted to just get to know my mom on I don't know how to explain it, like on a deeper level, not necessarily like, but just having conversations with her, but through experiencing her country, and I felt like that would just be an even better bridge to our relationship. So for me, it was more of you know what, I might as well. And since my mom is still here, I want to be able to maximize my relationship with her and my understanding of who she is. So that was my reason. But what was your reason for coming to Korea?
Yeah, when I was in university, everyone expected that I would head to musical theater. That was what everyone thought I was going to do. And I almost did. But then it was my freshman year before I went to university, the year before freshman year. I actually traveled to Haiti and experienced firsthand what, extreme poverty can look like. And it really made me think, I actually would really like to do something actively to help the world, which is a very big goal to have in mind. So then fast forward to university, I totally forego any thoughts of music or acting or theater, nothing, because I felt it was very selfish and self-fulfilling. So instead I was like, I'm gonna be a nurse. That of course didn't pan out. And then I decided I'm gonna use my verbal skills and my thinking skills and I'm gonna go into diplomacy, and that sort of panned out. And I ended up studying international community development. After I graduated from university, I graduated with a degree in this international relationship studies. And I also was in an international relationship with a Korean guy. And so I kind of was partly thinking, for my career, if I want to continue, especially rescuing human trafficking victims who escape from North Korea and then, end up in bad situations, especially as they travel through China, I was thinking, I'm going to help those people. So in order to get this kind of position, I need to work in diplomacy and NGO work and that kind of thing. I should go to Korea to have a language fluency and understanding of politics and government, blah, 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 blah. So that was half of it. And the other half was that I was dating someone and he needed to come back to Korea to do military. So I think there was a semi-professional, semi-personal pull. And I ended up here.
Yeah. Well, that's
obviously things have changed a lot.
Yes, they have. You're not in that previous relationship anymore, right? I'm kind of glad that, I guess, without that relationship, you may not have been here.
I might not have.
Yeah, at least for the period of time.
Yeah, maybe I would have come later.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
Man. Yeah, so that leads you to where you are now. And we won't get into, what you're doing now and in the past 8 years. I think we can just kind of sprinkle that in over the next however long on this podcast. But I think we have a good sense of just how you were in your childhood.
Maybe. I don't know. I was nuts and weird. I was really weird.
Yeah, we might get into that too. We'll see. But yeah, so I feel like I've gotten to know you a little bit more, even though I've heard you talk about this.
Well, do you know all of these things? Did anything surprise you?
No. I mean, I've heard you talk about this.
I must be talking in my sleep or something.
I mean, we've obviously talked to each other, but I had to sort of pretend like I was the interviewer that didn't know anything.
You're pretending to be interested, but when I'm talking, in your head's like blah, 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 blah.
Yeah. So hopefully you guys enjoy that are listening and watching.
Oh, that was so short. Yeah. You know what? If you have questions, you can ask.
Definitely. Or let us know if you want us to go into other parts of Becky's life, and then we'll do future episodes.
It's pretty interesting. Not to,
obviously,
not to toot my own horn, but it's a pretty interesting story.
There's so much to go through, and within 20-25 minutes, you can't cover everything. But I think this is a good primer. And so now maybe the audience feels a little bit more comfortable with you. Not that they weren't.
I want them to be very uncomfortable.
Nice. And now it's time for the quick question. Today's quick question is from Vita C, and she says, congratulations on the new podcast. Thank you.
Thanks.
Here's my quick question. Cedric, since we hear you speaking English most of the time, or dare I say all the time.
Yeah. Well, he does make up his own little languages every once in a while.
Yeah. And you were studying the Korean language. And Vita, I know you've been a long-time subscriber, and you've heard me talk about me studying Korean. When you do your other freelance work, do you speak in Korean, and do you at this point feel fluent? And she also says, Becky, as articulate as always. So I think she's doing a little compliment for you.
Thanks, Vita.
Right, Vita. So that's a very good question. So when it comes to
다른 일을 할 때 한국말을 하시나요?
아니요.
이제
really.
한국말을 유창하게 할 수 있겠어요?
글쎄. My little cop out, like filler words.
Say, well.
So to answer your question, I'll start with the second question about do I feel fluent. I personally do not feel fluent yet in Korean. Now, it's funny because we just filmed a podcast on the Halfie Project talking about language and what it means to be fluent. And fluency can be subjective, but I'll say for myself, I feel like I'm not as fluent as I want to be. Like I can definitely hold my own. I can have conversations even on the phone, and depending on what we're talking about, I may not understand everything, but from the context, generally I'm okay. And for me, my biggest accomplishments here in Korea is to open up a bank account by myself, which I've opened up two by myself. So I would say that I'm nowhere near where I thought I would be. And the reason is because I don't study Korean. I was studying Korean.
It's funny, like it's almost like you needed to come up with some big grand reason. Like I've been trying to save the rainforests, but then
I wish I had a good excuse.
I don't study.
So at the end of the day, like I take full responsibility for it. Now, if you're not aware, I don't think I've vocalized this too much, but if you're not aware, like my language ability when it comes to Korean is one of my bigger insecurities.
We talked about this on a podcast specifically.
Oh, okay.
Remember Language Matters, that episode at the Halfie Project?
Yeah, so that's one of the reasons why I don't talk about it too much, and I don't really speak Korean, not on camera that much because at all. Yeah, because of that insecurity, which is one of the number one killers of anyone who's trying to learn a language, is like you just get over it, right?
Yeah, just get over it.
So for me, to answer your question, obviously I'm not super fluent, and even though I do a lot of freelance work, I do a lot of it with Becky now, and she kind of handles the Korean side. But there was a period of time where I was working for a Korean office or a Korean company for about 10 months or so, and with the exception of speaking to my team leader who had a degree of fluency in English, I did have to speak Korean in the office. So I would say during that time was where probably my language skills was at its, I guess, the sharpest, as opposed to now. Because with Becky, I speak mostly English. I don't have many friends that I hang out with, so
oh my gosh,
so I don't have the opportunity to really speak in Korean, but except when I'm like, obviously when I'm out in public, when I'm at a restaurant or just anywhere else, I speak Korean. Like if I have to catch taxi, I speak Korean. But that is not enough to really solidify and to practice. So I realized that language is best served when you immerse yourself. And you would think that in Korea, you as a foreigner, you're like obviously immersed in a country where the native language is another language than your own, but in Seoul, especially, it caters to foreigners so much, or English speakers, I should say, a lot more than it's helpful for language learners. Because you can get so comfortable in just operating in English. You can get around. Yeah, there are English options on the app and stuff like that you use. So, yeah.
It's in your head somewhere. You just need to bring forth that wellspring of information.
Right. And again, I don't talk about it too much. It's really stupid, I know. Like at the end of the day, but it's something that I haven't given up. It's just, and this is, I recognize this is an excuse, but it is also the reality that I keep myself so busy with things that I tend to prioritize other things before, like, I guess, practicing or studying
time
Korean.
In your own personal self.
Right.
You're constantly outputting.
Right. And, Becky could attest to it. I mean, I think I need to, like, reshift my priorities when it comes to that. But that's just how it's been for the last 2 years. It's just like my first year when I was in Daejeon. Yeah, I spent a lot of time speaking in Korean. I had actually more friends at the time, and they were Korean friends. So we would hang out, speak in English and in Korean because they were trying to learn English. But yeah, now it's just English for the most part. But so I will say this though. I do plan on improving, and I'm not someone who just says it. Like I'll eventually do it. I know it, but right now with everything that I got going on, I just keep pushing it to the side. But I don't know what your take is on my language ability. But
He's good. He just needs to practice.
yeah, for sure. But Becky, on the other hand,
Needs to practice.
yeah, she does, but she's definitely fluent. I would say she's advanced level. Advanced level. Not native, but advanced level.
Not yet.
So yes, Vita, that is the answer to your question. I'm ashamed to say, I've been here a little over 3 years now, and yeah, I'm gonna kick it into high gear very soon. So for sure,
He's kicking it into
I
high gear.
will remain accountable to you guys. Well, hopefully everyone enjoyed that episode and learned more about Becky. And also thank you for the quick question, Vita. If you guys are listening on the audio podcast, wherever you get your podcast, make sure that you are subscribed. And also, if there's a way for you to rate the podcast wherever you're listening, please do that. It'll definitely help out the audio side. And if you're watching on YouTube, you know what to do. If you are not subscribed, make sure you hit that subscribe button and click that notification bell. We're going to be uploading episodes every single week, so be on the lookout for that. Other than that, we're going to see you in the next episode. Peace.
Peace.